The DioField Chronicle is a strategy role-playing game released by Square-Enix that dares to try something new. While you might think it's a type of game more akin to Final Fantasy Tactics because it's, well, a strategy role-playing game released by Square-Enix, the DioField Chronicle feels more like one of those classic real-time strategy games you used to play years ago, minus the resource and building management. While it certainly makes for an interesting formula, does that necessarily make for enjoyable combat? Is the game's story and characters compelling or forgettable? Most importantly, is it really worth the $60 price tag? My name's Johnny Bueno, and let's take a look at the DioField Chronicle. The DioField Chronicle takes place on the aptly named island of DioField. The island is cut into sections with incredible names like Central Field and Southfield, and they host the many different houses and political figures you encounter throughout the game. Right off the bat, there's an obvious Game of Thrones inspired plot where all of the noble houses might seem to cooperate with one another on the surface, but have more self-interested hidden motives lurking underneath. Sprinkle in a resource war over the coveted resource known as Jade, in addition to warring factions to the east looking to get in on the action, it's clear right away that DioField is not a very safe place to live in. A lot of this information and various names are dumped on you right away at the beginning, which I found to be incredibly overwhelming and a little confusing, but I think I had a good grip on everything by about the third chapter or so. Fortunately, there is a library you can visit that contains information on the world and high-profile characters found throughout DioField and beyond. This is a nice addition should you wish to learn more, as the cutscenes that serve you the story typically don't go too far into the finer details of the world. And honestly, that's kind of a good thing, as I noticed that none of the cutscenes felt overly long or bloated. You're usually just given the information you need for the upcoming mission, with some additional context as to the purpose of the mission, but that's about it. So, it's nice that the information is there if you want to immerse yourself further into the world without being put to sleep by a cutscene that overstays its welcome. For characters, you'll find yourself in control of a mercenary unit known as the Blue Foxes. While many characters, more than I thought honestly, join the retinue, there are 4 primary characters who lead the charge of both this band of misfits as well as the story. Andreas and Fredrit are childhood friends from way back when. Andreas is a very direct and critical person who often isn't afraid to confront others and ask tough questions, though he often comes off as a bit of a dick.
I wanted to complete my studies, and luckily the Duke's Academy accepted me as a student.
A clever way of avoiding marriage.
Fredrit is more like the quintessential knight who seems like he always wants to do what's right, though his unwavering loyalty sometimes prevents him from thinking more critically. Iscarian is a Robin Hood-style do-gooder and all-around handsome dude who also wants to do what's right, though his view of what's right tends to clash with Fredrit, causing some friction between the two. Then there's Waltequin, who seems innocent at first, but quickly begins to show her arrogant side. This is something I liked about the DioField Chronicle. The game quickly shows you that these 4 protagonists have their own flaws and their own views of the world based on their individual backgrounds. This adds a sense of realism to the overall story, as you can't just plop 4 characters together and have them all be perfect paragons of morality like a lot of JRPGs might make you think. There are other standout characters like Izzy, whose scrappy, rough and tough nature makes her a pretty likable companion to Andreas and Fredrit. She also apparently has mild facial seizures, which I couldn't help but notice during a few cutscenes. I'm not sure if this is intended by the developers or what, but it makes her look absolutely goofy and a little distracting. Also, I have to shout out the voice acting, which was actually pretty good. I just finished Triangle Strategy not long before playing this, where the voice acting was less than stellar, so it was nice to hear some actual effort put in to bring these characters to life.
It's a monster! We have to get out of here!
No need. We will slay the beast.
Slay it? But surely that's impossible!
Combat in the DioField Chronicle takes place on diorama-style fields where you'll be in control of 4 units. While the battlefields themselves may be reminiscent of past tactical RPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics, the combat in this game sets itself apart by a pretty wide margin. It takes a much more fast-paced approach where you issue commands to your characters in real time, though every time you do give them a command, the game will pause, so maybe fast-paced isn't the right word. It feels very stop and go, and I kinda wish you could just use abilities and move in real time without having to stop every second or two, more like an actual RTS. It's mildly annoying, but it's not so bad that it ruins the overall combat experience. Your troops will fall into 4 different categories: soldiers, who excel in the front lines; cavaliers, who can charge into the fray and push enemies around; sharpshooters, who snipe from the back lines; and magicers, who are capable of performing large area attacks as well as support the team through healing magic. One feature I really liked is that, despite having only 4 active party members in the field, each member can have a sort of backup unit assigned to them, allowing you to use the abilities of whoever you select as your backup unit without actually putting them on the field. This is great in helping you fill the gaps that you may have in your active party. While I technically never used a Cavalier character on the field during my playthrough, I was still able to assign one as a backup to one of my soldier characters, so I wasn't completely missing out on the benefits the class brings to the fight. With this feature, you might be compelled to try to optimize who you bring onto the field and who you assign as backup, but honestly I'm not sure it matters that much because I found the game overall to be quite easy. Many battles do require some level of thought to successfully beat, but I can't think of a single mission that really tested my skills and made me go back to the drawing board to rethink my team setup. As long as you keep your characters out of the highly telegraphed area attacks, you shouldn't sustain too much damage, and any damage you do take is easily reversed by your healer. I can probably think of only a single mission where I had one character die, but that was about it. It probably doesn't help that Andreas felt incredibly overpowered, as he could easily wipe out an entire group of enemies on his own. Speaking of wiping out groups of entire enemies, summons make an appearance in the DioField Chronicle to help turn the tide of battle. You'll see some familiar faces like Bahamut, who can do massive area damage, as well as some other new faces like Salamander, who can buff your team's damage. You can summon them by filling the TP gauge in the bottom right corner of the screen by defeating enemies and picking up the glowing blue fragments that appear on the ground. They're quick, flashy, and can help put the battle in your favor if you're in a tight spot. The Final Fantasy fan in me was giddy to see Bahamut again, and I thought it was a nice addition to spice up battles. One thing that surprised me, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this might be the first Square-Enix game I played where the PC controls actually feel pretty good. Due to the nature of the real-time strategy gameplay, it just felt right that I could click and drag a box using my mouse to select all my units, and be able to point and click them to their destination, despite some occasionally questionable pathing. I'm sure the gameplay is perfectly serviceable with a controller, but I'm just happy that I wasn't immediately compelled to chuck my keyboard to the side. You win this time, Square-Enix. One last feature worth mentioning is the ability to speed up battles up to 2 times speed. This comes in handy quite often, particularly on those escort missions where your escort target takes their sweet time navigating around the level. This feature is especially helpful when redoing past missions, as I found myself needing to go back and collect some rewards I missed, or to simply farm up some gold. Honestly, I wouldn't hate it if every modern JRPG gave us the option to speed up the slower or more repetitive parts of the game. Between battles, you'll hang out at your base of operations, known as Elm Camp, upgrading everything imaginable and spending money in preparation for the next fight. Gold is the main currency for buying items from the shop, as well as summon upgrades, and I actually found myself short on gold more often than not throughout the game, as completing missions doesn't necessarily load you with cash. This was something I liked, as it forces you to spend your money wisely on the items and upgrades that you think will benefit you the most for the upcoming battle. You can spend your money to outfit your entire squad with decent gear, or go all in on one single character and overpower them with the best gear you can buy. Of course, you can repeatedly farm past missions for gold, so you do have the option to grind if you want to deck everyone out as much as possible. Missions are usually only a few minutes long, and the speed up feature is a thing, so grinding in the DioField Chronicle isn't as painful as other games. For upgrades, AP can be acquired through leveling up characters and is used to have them acquire special perks, like increasing their damage against a certain type of enemy. Materials collected from completing mission objectives are used to unlock new weapons and upgrade summons, and SP, also collected from completing mission objectives, is used to upgrade skills. Skill and summon upgrades can range anywhere from increased damage and range of attacks to additive buffs when performing an ability. Lastly, the facilities of Elm Camp itself can be upgraded through completing side quests, and these can include increased experience and gold earned from missions, as well as unlocking higher tiers of the previously mentioned upgrades. You're introduced to this progression system early on, and it's going to stay that way for pretty much the entire game. This is where one of the shortfalls of the DioField Chronicle really shows. It has a very repetitive gameplay loop with little to no variation. What you're shown at the start is what you'll still be doing by the end of the game. Even Elm Camp itself barely changes beyond getting an incredible second floor to the building. I didn't mind this too much, but it might be a turn off for a lot of people. If you don't like what you see within the first 2 chapters of the game, there's not much there after that to change anyone's opinion on the progression and gameplay. It really felt like it needed a little more by the way of long-term progression. Maybe something like upgrading character classes into advanced classes like in the Fire Emblem series. There aren't even many new abilities to acquire throughout the game, you'll just spend most of your time enhancing the handful of abilities already given to you. This lack of impactful long-term progression is something that is sorely missing from the DioField Chronicle, and something I would love to see included if there's ever a sequel. To summarize my experience with the DioField Chronicle, let's take a look at what the game excelled at and where it fell short. For the positives, the characters are realistic and driven by their own separate motives, making for an interesting dynamic between the leaders of the Blue Foxes. Cutscenes are to the point, and there's an in-game library where you can learn more about the world if you're interested. The game features strong voice acting that helps bring each character to life. Combat takes a new and unique real-time strategy approach that is for the most part very enjoyable when you're not constantly pausing. Summons are a fun and effective addition that is sure to please fans of the Final Fantasy series. And it actually somehow feels good to play on PC. For the negatives, the intro can be a little overwhelming as it throws a lot of names and locations at you all at once. Constantly pausing when issuing commands can get pretty annoying and significantly slows down the flow of combat. The game is quite easy, most battles won't have you struggling too hard as long as you've brought a healer. The gameplay loop is fairly uninspired and repetitive. You'll have seen pretty much everything the game has to offer by the first few chapters. And the progression system is overall quite bland, offering little to no exciting options for progressing your characters over the long term. For a game I had absolutely no expectations for when I first picked it up, the DioField Chronicle ended up better than I thought. But its bland gameplay loop and progression system left me wanting for more by the time the credits rolled. So, to answer the questions posed at the start of this video, the combat is enjoyable, albeit a little easy, and the game does have a compelling story and cast of characters. But I definitely don't think it's worth the full price tag of $60. It just felt like there wasn't enough variation in game content to warrant buying the game at full price. But I definitely think it offers a fun enough experience that it's at least worth playing if you can find it on sale for $40 or less. And that concludes this look at the DioField Chronicle. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and please let me know what you think in the comments below. There's still plenty of exciting content to come where I'll be taking a look at titles both old and new. So subscribe if you want to see more, and thank you for watching.